Guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So, today I just wanted to talk about my April reading list as well as my March reading list. So, basically, I did manage to finish Sapiens and I did start Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari. And I also did start reading a bit on Taoism. So I was just curious about the religion, and I sort of did learn a bit about it. Because, in my opinion, Taoism, Buddhism, and Stoicism are all useless, but I have gotten a better understanding of them. That basically Buddhism is about, letting go of desire in order to be happy. Stoicism is about an internal control of happiness, that your happiness should come from within. And Taoism is about being in harmony with the universe. In fact, I should probably make a separate video on that, even though it's not much to say. But in this other video, I, in this other video that you're watching, the books that I've read so far in both April and the start of May is this book, Comic Experience Guide to Writing Comics, because I do want to write my own comic, right? I've really struggled with coming up with the characters, but my goal is to hopefully become rich enough that I'm able to afford to hire a bunch of sophisticated writers that can just do the story for me. Um, which other book did I read? I started reading a book on vital lies and simple truths, but I didn't get too far in it. And I'm still also reading the book on coding. I admit I have not made much progress there. I hope to make more progress. But I started doing a lot of self reflection, and I remembered how back in 2017 I said I'd basically reached the end of books, in the sense that I believed everything I was supposed to learn, I was supposed to learn in person, like from people, because you can't ask a book questions. Because in your journey of reading, like once you've read a couple of books, maybe 50, 70 books, you reach the point where you realize you just have to learn in person. And there's some things where I've read books versus learned them in person from people who've also read books. And I just found that experience where I learned in person to be, leagues above and beyond what the books were teaching me. Like, not even close. Like, oh my gosh, the learning experience I've had was just incredible. It was literally on the next level. Like, obviously, the book did give me a few basic ideas, and those basic ideas were helpful. But in terms of the localization of what you learn and the execution of what you learn, you will not get that from the books, right? The books are a start and the books can help, but there are just some things that you will not get from the books, which is why I highly advise that for some things it's better to learn them in person. Not everything. I mean, psychology, yeah, you can read a lot of psychology books in on your own, but when it comes to things like maybe dating, you can read dating books, but I think it's better to meet up with people who also read dating books and to compare notes and get advice from them. With business, especially, I think that's one area where you can read books, but the real life experience must be something entirely different. So that's why I look forward to that real life experience. And one of the reasons I've been lazy to finish the coding book is simply because I think that once I do go back to Australia, I will have the chance to just meet people who do code and to learn from them and to just discuss things with them. So I really don't see the point in finishing the book on how to code right now. Aside from that, I've also been trying to learn a bit of touch typing. Oh yeah, I remember that these three books I downloaded on stupidity. There's the little book of stupidity, the basic laws of human stupidity, and the psychology of stupidity. I think I started one of them, but they seemed very basic because I don't think stupidity is really something easily understood. There was also editing humanity and hacking Darwin. Because once I was finished with once I was finished with Sapiens, I wanted to learn more about gene editing. But these books seem to be talking about the morals of gene editing, and I don't give a fuck about the morals. Like, I just want to know what gene editing is capable of, right? So that's why I wasn't really too keen on that. There's a book on the history of China. It was kind of interesting, but I still want to finish the book on South America. So yeah, I'll get around to it eventually. And as well as this book on philosophy. It seems pretty interesting, but I'm not really a fan of reading philosophy. I more practice it through debate, but reading it is not that interesting to me. Uh, I was gonna read the Hercule Poirot series, but I found out they made it into a TV series. Let's see. And I was gonna read the humanist books, but as I said, I sort of did some reflecting and I asked myself, like, was I really better off after I read Sapiens? Like, did it really impact my life? Did it really make such a huge difference that I can now move forward in life and be like, oh, wow, yes, using this knowledge, it's a complete game changer? And I think the answer is no, because it said some interesting things like about early Homo sapiens and how they behaved. And it did talk a lot about religion as well as science. They talked about the history of the scientific revolution. But at the end of the day, it wasn't really, how do I put it? It wasn't really helpful. Like, what's that got to do with the price of bread? How is it going to put food on the table? It wasn't really that helpful in the grand scheme of things. Like, yes, it was a good book. And yes, the information was interesting, but in terms of my immediate needs or my current future needs, I don't really think it was going to help me that much. Now, would I have liked to read such a book eventually? Yes, but I'm just saying the other things I wish I knew instead of the Sapiens book, which again is information that can't really be gleaned from books. So now we're in May. It is literally the 1st of May. And in terms of my reading list, it's kind of tricky, but I've started to focus a lot more on reading books that will help me write characters for my comic. And I'm really struggling with character development for my comic because I think writing characters can be extremely difficult, especially if you're trying to make superheroes. So that's where I'm at right now. But the thing is, trying to find a book on writing is almost like finding a book on cooking. Like, remember, I showed you how many books I have on cooking. Like, these are all basically, as in, you can see how many they are. All of these are just books on cooking. These are like 62 books on cooking, and I have about 20 more, so there may be 80 or 90 books on cooking. And you can just see how varied it is. And I believe that's how learning how to cook is that you have, like, for example, you have one book just on chicken breast recipes alone. I know there's another book on cooking birds. There's pasta. There's another chicken thigh book. There's burgers. I think that's how writing is. Like, writing is basically something that you're never gonna read just one book and be able to write. It's not really like psychology, for example. So with psychology, I only needed to read one book on body language, and that was it. That was definitely it. I didn't need to read a single other book on the subject. There was a book on face reading, but that's more of the structure of the face rather than the body language itself. uh, with lie spotting, there are two books, but really you probably only needed one, and even the book on body language was probably enough. With personality, it's literally just three books, and you'll know the totality of uh, personality. So, like, just one book on the Kelsey temperament sorter. So, Please Understand Me Too by David Kelsey, and the Enneagram book. I think if you Google it, like any book on the Enneagram that has the wings. So those two books, and you're able to understand like the majority of personality psychology, right? But with cooking, for example, it's such a broad field. It's so broad that you have to read so many books. And I feel writing is the exact same thing, that it's really, really broad, that you can have a book on just characters alone, on just plot alone, on just theme alone. You can have books on writing for screen time, writing for movies, writing for books themselves, writing for comics, and they're all different mediums. So, yeah, it's really trying to navigate like through a maze or dungeon. It's a lot. It's pretty difficult. So I think right now I'm just gonna focus on the books on writing for comics, and hopefully I'll have a better idea of what my comic is supposed to look like.